Welcome everyone to the Wednesday morning series for our webinars. It's Scott's month this month to present on a topic. And what do you have for us this month?
We're going to talk, I'm calling this "You Get What You Tolerate." Um, and it's about boundaries. And this is going to be hopefully applicable to both addicts and betrayed partners, and frankly, anyone. Because in life, we do get what we tolerate. I was thinking this morning, what do I want to talk about? And I was like, okay, I'm going to start out and just tell a little about my childhood. I had one parent who was sort of checked out, alcoholic, workaholic, very nice, but emotionally no there. And I had another parent who was narcissistic, abusive, um, and just narcissistic and abusive, and it was all about that particular person. Um, and as a child, I tolerated both of these because I was a child and I had no choice. These are the people that provide for me, that take care of me. One of them is checked out. The other one is very, very inconsistent and really more interested in herself than her children or her husband or anyone else on the planet. Um, so that was normal for me. Um, what happened with that was, I had no boundaries because I was a tool to keep a certain person calm. My job was to take the temperature in the room and behave accordingly. Um, don't rock the boat, steady the boat, provide what that person needs, and don't make a fuss. And to the point where I was told, you're a boy, boys don't have emotions or feelings. You're not allowed. Um, so, I could never feel anything. Um, and feelings tell us what we need. And boundaries are about needs. So with this, no feelings means no needs, means no boundaries. Um, so, I was an object to be used. And I carried that with me into my adult life. I became needless and wantless. I had no boundaries, or the boundaries I had were were not healthy boundaries. They were walls. I mean, I describe it. I built a 10-foot high wall. I topped it with razor wire. I painted a smiley face on the front so everyone would think I was okay because I'm supposed to look good. Um, and that was my boundary. No one got past the wall ever. It was not healthy. It was isolating. Um, and I lost my sense of self. I probably lost my sense of self long before that. Um, but and I continued to tolerate the behavior of others, whatever it was. Um, and as we tolerate bad behavior or intrusive behavior, or you know, we lose our trust in other people. And what happens over time is I will turn to an addiction. I'll turn to a substance or a behavior to self-soothe my emotional pain rather than turning to another person because other people cannot or will not meet my needs. They simply are untrustworthy in that. If I have a feeling, I squash it, and I squash it by numbing out. Alcohol works, drugs work, porn works, sex with strangers works. You know, Another thing that works is control, 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 control. I become not mutual. I become a manipulator. We were talking about this in the work group, alumni group last night that I facilitate. And we were talking about how we become chameleons, we become manipulators, we become what we think you want us to be. Um, and it's not fair to you, it's not fair to us because you never get to see the real us, which you may want. And we don't even know who the real us is. Um, but yeah, usually we turn to some version of both numbing and manipulating / controlling. And this happens whether we're addicts or betrayed partners. Everybody in life does this to some degree. But people who grew up without healthy boundaries, people who simply tolerated whatever was thrown in their face, um, were the we're the ones who really manifest this in our adult lives. I'm either going to escape, numb out, or I'm going to micromanage every tiny little bit of my life and your life, by the way, um, or I'm going to do both. Um, these are not boundaries. These are maladaptive, self-protective mechanisms. They are not boundaries. Boundaries are about getting my needs met. I need to be, I need to feel worthy. I need to feel safe. I need to feel wanted. Those are my needs. And when I have feelings, when I'm lonely, when I'm bored, when I'm afraid, it's usually because one of those needs is not getting met. Feelings are information, they tell us what we need. And healthy boundaries are about ensuring that we can get our needs met. Um, you know, so I can't stress this enough. Healthy boundaries are about getting my needs met and facilitating you getting your needs met. Boundaries protect me from you, they protect you from me, and they also protect me from me. And that's a big one. I have to have boundaries that protect me from me, that part of me that tolerates. Um, Here's what healthy boundaries are not. Healthy boundaries are not about controlling the behavior of other people. And so many of us feel like I'm going to set a boundary that says you will do this or else. You will not do this or else. That is not a healthy boundary. Healthy boundaries are not about controlling other people's. Healthy boundaries are about controlling my behavior in reaction or response to other people. Tami, if when you do X, it causes me to feel unsafe and unworthy and unloved. In the future, if when you do X, I will respond by stepping away or asking for a 15-minute break in the conversation or, whatever the consequence is going to be. But the consequence is me taking an action to stay safe. Um, you know, it's not about controlling Tami or whatever. It's about me. It's about controlling me. How am I going to behave when my need to feel safe or loved or validated or what is not being met? Um, you know, that said, healthy boundaries are not walls. They're not about shutting someone out. They're about letting people in safely. You know, my boundaries in the beginning, remember, wall, tall, razor wire, smiley face. That is not healthy. Healthy boundaries are not walls. They're picket fences with the gate. You know, I build a picket fence with the gate. People can see over and through the picket fence. They can see me. Maybe I'll open the gate and let them in and we can chit chat in the front yard for a while. And if we get to know each other and you're safe, maybe I'll invite you to the front porch and we can have some lemonade. Maybe you'll get to come in the house someday, see how I really live. Um, but if you're not safe, I can keep the gate closed. I can still see you, you can still see me, but I'm not inviting you in. You know, uh, I have, one of my parents is abusive, um, remains so to this day. Um, I have a picket fence with this parent. I can open the gate and let her in as long as it feels safe. And when it no longer feels safe, I can usher her out and close the gate and say, okay, I'll talk to you when you're not behaving this way. Um, Now, here's the deal. And this is where boundaries get really hard. We think that, like, if Tami and I are having a problem, disagreement, or whatever, and we want to set a boundary, or I want to set a boundary, there's a part of me that wants to people please and get her buy-in. Tami, will you agree to that? What, blah, 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 blah. No, that is not how boundaries work. My boundaries are about me, not you. I don't need your buy-in. I need to set a boundary that keeps me safe. I'm using Tami as an example. I love Tami, so don't worry, anybody. We get along just fine. So my boundaries are about me staying safe. And it doesn't matter if you like that boundary or not. I am going to hold this boundary so that I stay safe. And if you're in a relationship right now with your partner or your kids or your parents or anyone, a boss, whoever, and there were not boundaries before, or there were poor boundaries before, or there were inconsistent boundaries before, and you try to set a boundary and hold it, there will be pushback. And it is up to you, not the other person, to hold your boundary. I was on our alumni call, this is probably a year and a half ago, with treatment center alumni, residential alumni, and one of the guys was complaining that his wife had broken a couple of really important boundaries the night before. I said, "Oh, what are those boundaries?" He said, "Well, I work until 5 and then I have to navigate rush hour traffic for 45 minutes. And she's not supposed to call me, between 5 and 5:45 so that I can drive and keep my mind on the road and not kill myself wrecking." And, so she called me at 10 minutes after 5. And then our other boundary is no, loaded conversations have to end after 15 minutes. That's my other boundary. And she kept me on the phone for 2.5 hours. And I laughed at him and he said, "What?" And I said, "She didn't break your boundaries. You did. You picked up the phone at 10 after 5. She knows what your boundary is. And then you stayed on for 2.5 hours instead of 15 minutes. You know, she didn't break your boundaries. You did. If we don't hold our boundaries, no one will hold our boundaries. Um, you know, Boundaries do not require mutual agreement, and they do not require another person's cooperation. The only person who has to agree and cooperate with my boundaries is me. It's 10 after 5. I'm not picking up the phone. You know that I don't pick up the phone at 10 after 5 because I'm driving. If you're going to scream at me, you get 15 minutes. You know, at 15 minutes, I'm going to say, "Okay, nice talking to you. Bye." That's my limit. Um, but, that relationship had no boundaries before, and the guy was having trouble keeping the boundaries that he had set so he could feel safe. Um, when you set a boundary, the stem sentence we use, if or when you do X, it causes me to feel A, B, and C, unloved, unworthy, less than. That's really hurtful to me. So in the future, I will respond by stepping away from you. And it would be really helpful if you could recognize that, think about your behavior, and then we could have a nicer conversation later or whatever. Um, but it's up to me to enforce that. It's not up to you to enforce that. It's up to me. Um, and you're likely to resist, and that's okay. I will hold my boundary and I will do it often enough that you will realize, oh, this is a boundary. Um, and what happens in relationships where there's resistance to boundaries is over time, we often come to appreciate the boundaries. This is actually something I hear from addicts that I work with. My wife said, at the beginning, they're like, my partner set all these boundaries, and by the end, they're like, "Oh, thank God, now I know what the rules are." you know, now I know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And we have a much better relationship because of it. There's a Brene Brown quote here. I want to read it. "I trust you if you are clear about your boundaries and you hold them, and you are clear about my boundaries and you respect them. There is no trust without boundaries. I trust you if you are clear about your boundaries and you hold them, and you are clear about my boundaries and you respect them. There is no trust without boundaries." I love that quote. Healthy relationships require healthy boundaries. And if you don't have healthy boundaries, you're going to have a lot of dysfunction in your relationship, and that's a fact, with or without betrayal. There will be dysfunction without healthy boundaries. Here's another Brene Brown quote. When we fail to set boundaries and hold people accountable, we feel used and mistreated. And this is one I hear from trade partners. It's like, when we fail to set boundaries and hold people accountable, we feel used and mistreated. And holding people accountable does not mean I'm going to control their behavior. It means if and when you behave this way, it causes me to feel this, and I will respond with this. And then we need to actually follow through. If we don't follow through and hold our boundaries, we lose all credibility, and they're never going to respect their boundaries. So here's some boundary tips. One of the ways we conceptualize visually boundaries is hula hoops. I have a hula hoop, you have a hula hoop. I need to stay in my hula hoop. Hopefully you're going to stay in your hula hoop. And it's not about staying separate. You can come over and our hula hoops may cross. And that's fine. If our hula hoops can cross safely, then by all means, let's cross hula hoops once in a while. But but even with crossed hula hoops, it's this, that's a weird visual, but some of this stuff over here is still mine. I don't need you doing it. This is one of Tami's favorite sayings, not my circus, not my monkeys. It's like, do I need, and this is something I do. I will ask myself 3 questions sometimes when I'm about to cross into somebody's boundaries. Does it need to be fixed? Does it need to be fixed right now? Is it mine to fix? And the answer may be yes, yes, and no. And if any of those 3 answers are no, not my circus, not my monkeys. So anyway, healthy boundaries are about getting your needs met. When you set a boundary, please think about this. What is the need that I have right now that causes me to want a boundary? I'm not feeling safe. I don't trust you. Okay, I need a boundary. I need you to check in with me, or things like that. What is my need? Number 2, am I trying to control somebody, or am I trying to control my own behavior in relation to somebody? Ask yourself that. And number 3, am I building a wall or am I building a picket fence? If you're building a wall, rethink the boundary. If you're building a picket fence with the gate in it, it's probably a good boundary. Because we do want to have relationships with other people, even people who've hurt us in the past. We just want to have a safe relationship with other people. We're not going to tolerate being hurt anymore. We're not going to tolerate being ignored, dismissed, devalued. But we still want love and affection and validation, all these things that we can only get from other people. So anyway, you get what you tolerate. Tami, any thoughts or anything you want to add?
Oh, lots of thoughts. Even back when you were talking about being the chameleon, because I was like, as human beings, we want to be seen for who we are. But if we're always being a chameleon, no one ever really knows us. And we may not even really know ourselves, And so even if somebody says they love us or like us or whatever,
It
we're like,
doesn't
we
sink
don't
in.
really know.
It
Exactly.
doesn't sink in because they love the chameleon.
Yes.
They love the
And
facade, not us.
yes,
And it's
yes,
painful. You're so right. Thank you for bringing that up.
yes. That I would, but it reinforces that we are not worthy of love because we are just showing this side, and that's what they like. That's the version they like. So we have to show up as that. So, and I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing, your growing up situation, and even, as it continues today and how you've learned to navigate that. But of course, as children, we know for sure that we're the problem. These are the adults. They're supposed to know how to do life and all that. So we internalize all those things. And then, yes, it is the challenges that we create by, figuring out a maladaptive coping mechanism to help us navigate the world that is not safe. I really appreciate what you're talking about. And I always say boundaries are not control or punishment, because sometimes it's like, I want to punish you, I want to control you, but sometimes it's, I just want to punish you. And I love that you were talking about, like, if it isn't if any one of the three answers is no, then this is not my circus and not my monkeys. And while it feels really scary to let go of the trying to control everything, it is freeing to just focus on what can I do, because that is the only thing I have any control over, is what I choose to do, my actions and my reactions. I do better if I act rather than react. And so I try to get it into my, is this the right thing? I think it was really important too when you were talking about, what is my need? And sometimes that isn't so obvious. It feels like, well, I need safety. Well, what is it that feels unsafe? I'm feeling rejected. I'm feeling abandoned. There's probably, or there could be something deeper. So taking time to reflect on that, talking to other people about, this is what's going on, and I want to set this boundary. I love it when people talk through their boundaries, because otherwise they come off as control.
Talk through your boundaries with your support network, not
Correct.
necessarily the person you're
Yeah,
setting the
thank you for
boundary
clarifying. Yes, yeah, no,
regarding.
yeah. Well, and I was thinking too, like boundaries are really important. It's like navigating the minefield of, things. And so yeah, rules, that's one word for it. But I just think this is how we figure out how to interact in the most optimal way. So, because rules can feel like, oh, you're giving me the rules. No, I'm giving you the manual on how to navigate a relationship with me. And I want your manual too, so that we can do this in the best possible way. And I love that you shared about the alumni. Um, and and you're right, and even if the partner was calling every, calling,
Mhm.
if the boundary is, don't talk, don't try to
Right.
call me, then, and, at 9 or at 5:46, probably then, it's a fair game. But yeah, all of those things. But addicts and partners both struggle with boundaries. So this is one of those for both people. Matt Wheeler, our mutual friend, talks about the healthiest relationships have the most boundaries, because then we know what the expectations are, and we're less likely to be causing, doing things that would be hurtful to each other. So always a great topic. I did put in the
Yeah.
chat the betrayed partners, Debbie McCrae. I call her the queen of healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
She is starting another betrayed partner work group for boundaries at the end of May. I think it's the 27th. I didn't go
I
check on
believe
that,
so.
but yeah. Yeah. So if this is not something you're fluent in, and most of us are not, I
Yeah.
would recommend that you consider participating in that and getting some. I mean, she teaches and then helps people figure out what they're looking for themselves as well.
Yeah. One of the short versions of an in the moment boundary is the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, which is all of you, your thinking and your behavior. The courage to change the things that I can,
Yep.
me, my thinking, my behavior, my attitude, my response or non-response, and the wisdom to know the difference. Um, Early recovery for me, the serenity prayer was law. It's like I can't control you, I can control me. Okay, I'm going to control me, um, and
And I
how I
said it as a
respond to you.
mantra. I would just
Yeah,
repeat it over and over, and it would take, sometimes I mean, it might take 10 times, for me to go, oh wait, it's just me, but how empowering. Like, that
yeah,
is the one thing I have
right,
control over. So rather than it being disempowering, it's absolutely empowering. Oh, I can change
yeah,
my, and I can also look at things. If, we love Troy Love's work, with the attachment wounds. And, if one of my wounds is getting poked, my reaction is going to be mirrored towards that. But if I go, oh wait, that's my abandonment wound, and
yeah,
I know how this feels, and I can choose something that would be healthier, like you were talking about health. I can do healthy things. I think that was really important too, that you're talking about. I I am abandoning myself
yeah,
if I am not holding healthy boundaries for me, and the internal boundaries. And again, Debbie McCrae is the queen of healthy internal boundaries.
yeah,
That's where all of this starts. So,
yeah.
okay, we've got questions. Betrayed partner, first day was 23 years ago. Multiple, oh, I think that was
D-Day.
D-Day. Oh, yeah, multiple betrayals, and last D-Day was 9 months ago. My Husband is abstinent. He is attending some seeking integrity drop-in groups. He was seeing a CSAT, showed that she lacked integrity. She admitted during disclosure that she guided my husband to answer a question with lack of integrity. Create a crazy definition of physical sexual contact is. Yesterday in interviewing CSAT, he was dishonest and minimized. When is it time for me to end this? So tired.
When is it time for me to end this? We literally cannot answer that question for you. Only you can answer that question for you. Some of the other stuff in this question, a lack of integrity. We call our company Seeking Integrity for a reason, because we want the insides to match the outsiders. And that's a little bit about what we were talking about today, is if I'm just tolerating everyone and everything, I'm not in integrity, because I'm not being me. I'm not showing you me. I'm the chameleon, or I'm just numbed out. I'm absent. I like that he's got some abstinence. Our goal is not abstinence. Our goal is recovery. Recovery starts with stopping the problem behaviors, but it doesn't end there. Otherwise, we end up with what we call a dry drunk. Recovery is about changing my own I'm speaking as an addict, changing my own thinking and behavior, the way I act and react in the world. It's about becoming a better person. The 12 steps of any program, steps 1 through 3 are kind of, I have a problem, I need help, I think I'll get some help. 4 through 9 are about, it's a reality check. It's recognizing my part in all the crap in my life and cleaning it up and making amends. That's the bulk of the program right there. Getting right with myself first and then the world. And that leads to integrity. By the time we get through step 9, we should have a pretty good hold on integrity. It sounds like there's struggles with integrity right now. There's struggles with honesty. There's struggles with truth. A crazy definition of what physical sexual contact. I'm not even going to get into that. But yeah, a huge part of recovery is accepting reality, surrendering to reality. My reality is I'm an addict. And now that I've surrendered to that fact, I'm obligated to do something about it. And that means stopping my behavior, dealing with the underlying issues, childhood pain, the things I tolerated as a child, dealing with that. There's a reason most of therapy deals with childhood, or a lot of therapy, talk therapy especially, is because we tolerated everything. We had no choice. And that causes us to lose our sense of self, et cetera, everything we just talked about. I'm rambling. Tami, help me.
Okay, so I put some resources in. Like this has been 23 years. So we have a webinar series. There were 4. Should I stay or should I go? The first one is there's 10 questions. Kristen Snowden did that out of Dr. John Gottman's work, and it journal about that. See where you're at.
Yeah.
Are you 80% in the relationship, or are you going like, yeah, I'm 10%? We have a moving on alone drop-in group. I didn't add that. I will add that to the chat. That's on Thursdays. That is for partners who have been left, or have one foot out the door. Might be good for you too. What I hear is I'm so tired. I also put the Empowered Women's Retreat. This is about healing for you, regardless of what he does or doesn't do. Just like we've been talking about with boundaries, you have zero control over him. And as a quick aside, because the definition of physical sexual contact, I'm going like, is it something that he would do with you standing right next to him or sitting right next to him? Is it something that he would do? That if he told you exactly what he was going to do, that you would go, sure, go do that. That's the simplest way. If it's not something that, is transparent, if there's secrets and minimization, it's a problem. But he's been dinking around for 23 years. How exhausting. I have 2 things: focus on healing you, and that's Scott mentioned we have an excellent and expert residential treatment program, and a boundary for you. We've had other people who have been like, I love you, but I can't keep doing this to myself. And so at this point, I need a higher level of help. I'm not going to go through the next 23 years, setting aside myself, because this is about you. I'm not going to sacrifice myself, on this. I don't know what's right for you, just making this up, but it might be, it's time for you to, what you have been doing is not a high enough level of help. Dr. Rob talks about this all the time. If what you're doing is not enough, you need to level up. And, we have guys that have come from all over the world to our treatment program, for expert treatment, not just to stop the problematic behavior. That's just abstinence, like Scott was talking about, but to change, and you can read the endorsements on our website. Those are unsolicited. People just write and I ask permission. And then when we post them anonymously and it's not just from the addict partner, it's from the betrayed partner as well. And I love that because they're seeing that things can be different. So the level of tired, I hear you, and that would be exhausting. And so to me, for you, I hope that you work on focusing on you and your healing, regardless of what he does or doesn't do. Oh, one other thing on the boundaries, I was thinking you mentioned too, the system will fight. If you start putting boundaries in when it's been boundaryless, the system will fight. And so I think it's highly important for people, that are new to establishing boundaries to have support in holding them, because the wearing, I was thinking it because it's so tired, it will be, I'm going to wear you down until I get what I want. So okay, the next one, we have a timeout agreement. We made a timeout sign, or say we are taking a timeout. My wife will often try to avoid following through despite the timeout I have called. It triggers her abandonment wound. 2 days ago, I called a timeout during a 30-minute argument. I was supposed to get a specific room and I was supposed to go to a specific room and she was also, according to our agreement, and I would circle back in 20 minutes to a neutral location. She was at that time trying to make me leave the house all day, which is not in the agreement. I tried to leave the room, her safe space. She is very particular about her physical body boundaries and makes it very clear she doesn't want to be touched in these situations. She physically blocked the doorway. She stood there trying to argue with me for 5 minutes. She refused to move out of the doorway. I tried to get by her, but she refused to slide over a few inches. I had to wait and keep requesting that she move. I would never scoot by her and touch her, as that would be a severe escalation.
One of the relationship boundaries that a lot of couples actually agree to, and boundaries can be mutually agreed to, is, we can take a time out in an argument. Like if we've been going for 30 minutes and one of us or both of us are getting flooded, we can take a time out and come back in 20 minutes or however long, and when we've calmed down a little bit and we can try to continue. It's a very healthy boundary to have. Unfortunately, somebody didn't want to hold the agreed upon boundary at this point. You know, I think you did the right thing by just asking, may I leave the room, please, for our agreement. I'm assuming you were that calm. Maybe you weren't. I don't know. In the heat of the moment, it can be very hard to hold boundaries, especially when there were no boundaries there before. So this is someone pushing back on a boundary in the moment. I applaud you for trying to hold the boundary. And it sounds like you did. This is probably something, I hope you guys have a couples counselor. I know you've been around for a while, so I think you do. This is something that should be discussed. This is our boundary, and we couldn't hold it in the moment. Let's work on this. One of the we call them respectful conflict agreement or respectful conflict boundaries. One of the ones that I encourage everyone to have is, we will fight the problem instead of each other. We are allies. We are on the same team. We will identify the problem and fight the problem, not each other. It's another hard boundary to hold. It takes practice with boundaries, especially new boundaries. Keep trying is my advice. Tami probably has more thoughts on this.
I would have a hard time being trapped in, like that. So like I'm actually having a reaction to this. I was like, I don't know that I would have not, I don't know that I would have been able to hold her boundary for not being physically touched if I was feeling trapped. So I honor that you were able to do that. This needs your couples therapist to
Yeah.
state exactly what happened. And I love what Scott said, like we're going to fight the issue, not each other. And if there is an agreement on that, I mean, one person can't fix the relationship. You can hold healthy boundaries, but yeah, when you're trapped inside the room that you like, that's very challenging. So I'm like, go see your couples therapist, give exactly what happened, and ask. I mean, it would be a fair, like, what am I supposed to do in that when we can't, I can't follow what we mutually agreed upon. So challenging. Okay. Thank you both for being here. Seeking integrity has been a lifesaver for me. I'm separated from my SA and he has had a relapse a year and a half ago. And he seems to have chosen his addiction. I need him to be a father to my kids. I need his help. One of my sons was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I know I probably need to divorce him, but I'm fearful he will disappear. How do I stay in this situation without feeling the pain of knowing he is having sex with others? I do go to groups. I have good friends through the groups and I have hobbies, but I feel so much pain from his behaviors. Any idea on how to feel better?
Wow. First of all, I feel your pain, and I want you to know I'm validating, all of your feelings right now because you're right to have them. Um, I think you need to check out your legal rights. I think you need to speak with the lawyer, whether you plan to divorce or not. You need to speak with the lawyer. Um, Tami has a bunch of resources that I know she can share. Um, you know, any ideas on how you can feel better? This is about self-care. It's about healthy boundaries. It's about taking care of yourself and your children, um, and holding him accountable if he's not holding up his end of the bargain. Because whether you are divorced or not, he has legal and ethical responsibilities. Um, and this is why I say, need to talk to a lawyer because your lawyer can help you hold him accountable, even if he doesn't want to be. And Tami has a lot more information on
Well,
this.
I put the should I stay or should I go, and
Good.
I would do that. Here's a bunch of things. First of all, you're fearful. I get it. So, and I agree with Scott, getting input. One of the webinars was, the third one was from someone who does mediation, and then the fourth one was legal. So check out the first one was the questions, the second one was a partner who stayed, a partner who left, and then the other two. So check those out. Those are just good information. I hear the fear, and I get it, but you're afraid he will disappear. And I'm reading this, I'm going, he already did. He is already, like, he's already separated and things like that. So there probably some acknowledgement of like what the situation really is, that he is not sure. I hope that he learns to live in recovery. Any addict is not really fully present. We can't be. We're still focused on all of us and this and that.
Yeah.
And so there, but in a divorce decree there can be. And it may be that there's, if he can't physically and emotionally show up, it may be that the court orders payment so that you can hire the care that you need for your child. I don't know. That would be, go talk to an attorney, be transparent, but actually watch that webinar series first so that you have some information, and then look for what you need for support. But the feel better, I mean, we this sounds trite and it isn't meant to be. If you can find some gratitude each and every day, you cannot be in the horrible feelings and in gratitude at the same time. So if you need a respite from everything that's going on, write a little gratitude list. Scott has shared on previous webinars, how he starts his day is with gratitudes. And it doesn't fix anything, but it does help us have a better mental ability to show up for ourselves. And, and you have a kiddo that, has type 1 diabetes, like extra load for you. And I love that you have support. You're naming support, things that you have and hobbies. So if you can lean into those things, unfortunately, your addict is still apparently in his addiction and not choosing, and you can't control that, and that's sad. He's missing out. Like, I know this is hard for you, but I swear he is missing out the most, on all of this, and sad for him and hard for you. So any other things to add on that?
No, I think you got it
Okay.
there.
All right. So the next one, I'm the addict, 5 years in recovery with over
This
4 years
is
of
this is a
sobriety.
follow-up to our second question. I think
Yes.
we covered
I
it.
brought it up again today about the timeout agreement. She continues to say that she was justified in blocking the doorway as she felt safety issues were present. I was not threatening. I was trying to leave. I felt a lot like she was trying to control me. Yep. Keep me in the room. There was no other exit. Second story. I will keep revisiting it, but I don't know where to go. She often continues to talk to me, shame, blame, and criticize me when I call the timeout, and will chase me around the house also. She refuses to disengage and conform to the timeout agreement we have made together and both signed. She always says exceptional circumstances, excuses for avoiding following the agreement, suggestions on how to approach it. There are no exceptional things. Yeah, this is one of those where, like, when someone is so refusing to shift and change, that would be really challenging for a relationship. If you are not mutually working towards
Yeah.
healing and healthy relationship, I mean, right now, this is what you got. So,
Yeah. And this is just not in the wife's defense here, but she is a person who tolerated too much, probably as a child and probably when the addict was acting out, and is now grasping for control, um, fighting the fear instead of working to resolve the problem. Um, and it's a tough switch to make. I mean, I said earlier, one of the things we do when we've tolerated too much is we'll try to control everything and everyone. Um, and we have reasons for it, exceptional circumstances. Yeah, we're all really good at that. But like Tammy said, you write it down, you sign it, you agree you're going to do it. There are no exceptional circumstances. Um, so yeah.
yes. Okay. My husband is a habitual liar. He lies to himself about everything, especially things that are related to integrity. What is the healthy boundary for me to set up?
Um, all addicts are habitual liars. Really good at lying.
To ourselves, just like you state, we lie to ourselves first. That's denial. Did you freeze up, Scott, or did I? I think, hmm, I don't know who froze up. One of us did. Okay.
Hope that it's. Oh, okay. Could you hear me there?
You froze, but I
Okay.
don't know if it's you. Sorry.
Okay.
But
Yeah. It
so,
says
yeah.
my internet's unstable. Um, with addicts, lies start inside. Our denial, our lies, our secrets, they start inside. I lie to myself first. I tell myself if Tammy was engaging in this behavior, Tammy would need treatment. But I'm different. I'm unique. It's okay for me to behave this way because, and I tell myself that over and over and over. I'm not actually cheating. Porn isn't cheating. It's not real people. Whatever it is, I tell myself. Um, and then when my partner says, "Have you cheated on me?" I can say, "No." And I can say it with the utmost sincerity because in my head, I believe that I have not cheated. We keep secrets. I engage in a behavior that I'm ashamed of. I compartmentalize it. I put it in a little sea chest. I slam the lid. I lock it. I shove it into the deepest, darkest corner of my mind. And then when my partner says, have you ever paid for sex? I can say, no, of course not. I would never do that. We're amazingly good liars. Usually it starts early in life, because we hide. I don't want you to see the real me. Um, we get really good at it. and it becomes a habit that's very, very, very hard to break. What I had to do, I set a boundary with myself. I wasn't in a relationship at this point, but I set a boundary in myself somewhere between about 8 and 9 months sober. I realized I was still lying and lying a lot. So if I lied or kept an important secret from somebody, I had to come clean within 24 hours. And if I didn't, I was going to reset my sobriety clock. And I could tell you, I had worked really hard for like 8 or 9 months, whatever. I didn't want to reset my sobriety clock over lying. So I started coming clean. But I gave myself the 24-hour window, the grace period, because the lies themselves, they were out of my mouth before I had even thought about them. I would be in a 12-step meeting and I would say something, and then I would have to raise my hand 10 minutes later and go, I just need to own up to a lie during my share. I don't even know why I said it. It takes a lot of work. So a healthy boundary for you to set up might be, if you lie to me about anything or you keep a secret, that anything I might want to know, other than, what you bought me for my birthday or something, you have 24 hours to come clean. And if you don't, I'm going to respond this way, whatever your response is. I'm going to ask you to sleep in the other room for a couple of nights, things like that. But I would suggest if you want someone to start lying, you got to give them like that 24-hour grace period, because it's so habitual that it's hard to break. And if I lie to you and I come clean at 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds, you're not going to get mad at me for taking that long. You can still get mad at me for what I did, what I was trying to cover up. 24 hours and 1 second, you have two things that you could be mad at me about. I took too long and I did whatever I did. That's kind of the boundary I typically recommend. Tammy, you may have thoughts too.
Yeah, well, you alluded to it. Lies of omission are just as
Oh
bad
yeah.
as lies of commission. So, you're right. He's lying to himself. That's the denial. And you can ask for him to sleep in another room, but you have to be willing to sleep in the other room because you can't make anybody do anything. So it's like, I'm going to go sleep in the other room, for a few nights, and it can be said with, I vision us having a relationship. I vision us having a good, and the lying absolutely, just wears me out. And I'm sorry you are struggling with that so much, but it really, creates a huge gap. So every time there's another lie that you are not owning up to, I love the 24-hour rule, that you are not taking responsibility for within 24 hours, then it sets the trust bucket back. Troy Love does, talks about the trust jar and putting marbles in, and
Mhm.
you can have a visual, like, when you're doing these things, even the 24 coming clean at 23 hours and 59 minutes, you put another marble in the trust bucket. When you find out another lie,
Yeah.
you have discovery, and visually empty it out. It's one of those things where this is a struggle, and it doesn't matter if it's sex and porn addiction or alcohol or whatever it is universal with addiction. We lie to ourselves first and then everyone else. So it is a challenge. We can learn, we can change, but it takes time and practice to do it differently. Okay, the next one. Please address essay using boundaries to avoid any accountability. Example, my boundary is I will never listen to anything I did in the past, how I hurt you only one time or on a 1 minute timer, etc. That is not a boundary. So you want to talk about that?
Well, it is. It's just not a
Well,
healthy
but it's
boundary.
not yeah. I mean, yeah, you're
um,
right. That is not a healthy boundary. That is
that's a
control.
wall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a better
Um,
example.
this is probably, if you're in couples therapy, this is a great thing to discuss in couples therapy. Um, we have respectful conflict agreement. If you just type that into the search feature on our website, it'll come up. Just type respectful conflict. Um, and that will give you some useful couples boundaries. The stuff about, we agree we're on the same team. We're going to fight the problem, not each other. Loaded conversations can go for 15 minutes and then we take a time out, or we continue it tomorrow, or we take it to therapy. But yeah, I'm not going to listen to you tell me what I did in the past or how I hurt you. I'll listen.
There's more. So let me read the next piece of
Okay.
this.
All right.
Latest boundary is my boundary is I will only talk about the present and the future. The new me, all else is in the past and over with. I refuse to be shamed by my past. You need to get over it, move on. I have. I plainly stated that my pain is valid. I need to sort through 25 years of betrayal to heal. If your boundary is not to address how your choices have affected me, then I am not willing to engage. For me, I to suppress what I need, work through answers to questions, my pain, my need is to be seen and heard is a core need. If I'm not allowed to express my reality, who I am, I feel there is no relationship to develop forward. I cannot function in a cage. The dynamic has been he expresses all his struggles, resentments, acting out pain and hurts to me, but I am shut down and boundaries are thrown up instantly if I express anything but validation and praise for him. Oh, goodness. His dire need for kudos and cheerleader dialogue is exhausting.
It sounds
So,
like you actually have a pretty good understanding of what healthy boundaries are, and you're trying to set them and hold them. You know what your needs are, um, and if I'm not allowed to express my reality, you know, maybe there isn't a relationship here. You can't function in. I love what you're saying here. There's a definite need for boundaries, and you need to express to him if I have this need when you behave in XYZ way, that need is not being met. It causes me to feel unheard, caged, whatever. Um, in the future, I will respond with this, this, and this. And it might be, one of the consequences might be I'm going to talk to a lawyer and you know contemplate divorce. Um, Even if in your heart you want to stay together, but also in your heart you're knowing he's stomping on your soul, basically. um when we try to control other people, it is a huge boundary violation, and it sounds like he's in certain ways trying to control you and your reactions and how you see him, and that's a boundary violation. Boundaries protect me from you, they also protect you from me. um And he's only doing the first half of that boundary. I'm going to protect myself. I don't want to feel shame. Okay, that's fine. Let's work on guilt instead of shame. But you need to hear this stuff. Um, so, Tami, thoughts? I mean, this is a
uh,
guy who's ripe for inpatient, probably.
yeah, yeah. Well, and the 12 step talks about we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. Even if you were not in the relationship, we still need to be able to reflect on our past, or we will for sure repeat it. So, and I'm cracking about the new me. I was like, well, the new me and sounds like it sounds like an a-hole. I'm pardon my language, but I'm like, what a jerk. He's like, so this feels like at best, we talked about abstinence, a little while ago. This feels like I may not be doing the acting out, and Scott, talking about dry drunk. It's like, like I'm just as nasty and rotten as I was, maybe even worse, because I don't have my go-to acting out to help numb me out and escape. But like, you're supposed to be the cheerleader, for him, and
Yeah.
but you're not. You get a 1 minute timer to express 20 some years of of pain. No, like, yeah. So I'm with Scott. This feels like residential treatment, and I'm just going to put a little plug in. Like, we get lots of people who have tried other programs first.
Yeah.
And I always say, if we're not your first treatment program, we want to be your last. Expert care. There's, workshops and boot camps and all of this other stuff. But to have life-changing treatment, something that really is meaningful and matters, there is no more expert treatment program than Seeking Integrity. Stopping the problematic behavior is literally the top layer. It's addressing all the underlying issues, this kind of stuff, that's going on for him. So I'm sorry for you, but yeah,
Yeah.
like, this is like, yeah, you sound like you're like very aware, you're not, you understand what he wants, but you're also going, yeah, not fair. So, okay, my essay partner has seemingly done everything required, rehab, daily meetings, CSAT work, exercise, etc., but is still having a hard time with basic sobriety. Does this suggest he's unlikely to recover, or is there something missing in the treatment plan?
Um, I will tell my story. I got into recovery in 2000. My sobriety date is 2002. And I went to rehab. I was doing meetings. I was seeing a CSAT more than once a week. Um, it took me a while to break through my own denial. Um, so, does the fact that he's on the revolving door right now, does that signal he's unlikely to recover? Absolutely not. Um, is there something missing in the treatment plan? I don't know. I haven't seen the treatment plan. Maybe, maybe not. What's missing is, for me, um, the first time I went to a 12-step meeting, it was a 12-step meeting for myself, is my sobriety date. Up until then, I had been doing it to appease this person and that person and so and blah blah. I was doing it for everybody else. I had a realization one day. This is killing me from the inside out. I cannot live this way anymore, or I'm going to die lonely, unhappy, miserable, afraid. I went to a meeting myself for myself, and I've been sober ever since. And I've been much better for the other people around me. All the people I was doing it for actually, got the benefit of me getting sober, but I had to do it for me. And that's probably right now what's missing is he's not doing it for himself yet.
Yeah, I'm going like this feels like I'm checking off boxes. Uh, but I mean, if he's been to residential treatment and
Yeah.
you didn't say SI, so I'm assuming some other program, but and there's intensive outpatients and some of them can work for some people, but I know people that work, I won't go into that. It does not feel like, yes, he has enough there hasn't been negative enough consequences, for there to be a willingness to shift perhaps, and so and we have lots of guys that come to our residential treatment program, and questions are asked, and why are you here? I want to be a better person. I want to fix our, well, why weren't you here 6 months ago? Well, now there's a more negative consequence. So,
Yeah.
things get worse, so if he is not willing to stop, the problematic behavior, um, uh, with all of that, things can get worse, and then maybe he will. Okay, last question. Can eroticized rage exist without being able to feel anger or any feelings in your body, and more from a repressed or avoidant personality acting out to dissociate?
Um, Not my area of expertise, but I'm going to say yes. Just my own personal experience. I describe myself as a really big bomb with a really long, slow burning fuse. And it was not a bomb that went in one direction only, it was a spray bomb. So when I went off, everything went sideways, collateral damage everywhere. Um, and some of it was eroticized rage. It was this angry sexual, you know, um, and that does often come from repression and avoidance, tolerating instead of dealing. So I'm just going to say yes, and with the disclaimer, not my area of expertise.
Yeah, and I was thinking, I'm with Scott both on the answer and the not the area of expertise, but I was like, or any feelings in your body, and I was like, I think we are so good at the disconnect that yeah, like it took time for me to be able to identify feelings and pay attention to my body. So I don't know if it's like we don't have the feelings in our body, or we just are so cut off from them that we don't recognize them. And I don't know the answer to that, but it's a fascinating question. So but here's the deal.
Maybe take
Like,
that one Monday to Dr. Rob. He
yeah,
might be a better person to ask for this one.
that would be a really interesting question. I'm also wondering, like, when Troy Love is on, that would be a good one for him as well. So, but here's the deal. Like, rage is a very powerful emotion, and it serves a purpose for us. We don't want to feel ourselves, and so ragefulness, like, I was thinking, Scott, when you said, it went off, and everybody in your wake is affected. And who's affected the most? Yeah, exactly. Because I was like, you're the one that exploded. So it's one of those things where if you identify that there could be some, rage, eroticized rage, it would be really good to work on that, and start finding other ways to handle that, that would be useful and healthy. So, okay. Thanks, everyone. Great questions. We so appreciate it. Thank you, Scott. Great topic as always. So
Yeah.
good job. Yeah. And yeah, lots of resources. Someone asked about, which work groups Scott teaches. I listed them, but you can find the facilitators for all of our work groups, on the work group tab on the Seeking Integrity site. So,
Yeah.
and
You
they're
can,
reoccurring. So, like,
yeah.
if you missed one, like if you're watching this video later, check them out. So,
Yeah, you can email me directly with questions on work groups to scott@seekingintegrity.com. I'll happily
mhm,
respond.
mhm. Yep, absolutely. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.